In my film opening, I used conventions a lot to create an opening in which the audience could identify the genre. I wanted to keep the storyline a little hidden to contain the mystery of what the film would be about, but I still wanted to give the audience imagery and sounds that they can easily connect to psychological thrillers. The music, colors, and shots all convey a clear sign of the genre. The use of interference from the more calming yet eerie blood and water shot to the distorted and glitched crime scenes or intense shots are used also to conform to the thriller aspect. I also challenge conventions in several different ways. One of the least obvious ways, which is actually now pretty popular in today's media, is the title of the film at the end of the opening and the credits at the beginning of the opening. It is pretty simple, but it still challenges the form that an audience may expect. I also tried to challenge story conventions in this opening. The audience can see what the genre is, psychological thriller, and a little bit about what may occur, such as killings, a serial killer, maybe a detective story, etc., etc., but they are placed now in a spot where they don't know exactly. And that was purposely done to intrigue the audience and leave them with questions that gain their interest. Curiosity alone from the opening might be what makes a certain person continue to watch my film, and I think that's cool. That is what I was going for, and I really like the idea that someone might be so curious as to what this opening could lead to that they just want to continue watching more, and that's kind of what I was going for. The representation in my opening isn't really clear to the audience. There are no social groups targeted besides, I guess, those of serial killers or detectives. But there are issues that can be interpreted from my opening. The issue of catching a killer, as simple and boring as it might sound, can maybe be an interpreted issue from my opening. There are also many more, such as the issue of serial killers in general, maybe the universal danger towards women, the FBI or the police or detectives that are trying to solve murder cases. The opening clearly shows the genre and that there will be murder, interrogation, and the likes. So just by looking at the opening, there's no definite representation presented, but it can be interpreted in many different ways. Each audience member can have their own idea on what it represents. My film opening is targeted towards people who enjoy psychological thrillers, whether it be teenagers or adults with an interest in the genre, or people majoring in criminology or just interested in subjects. I took inspiration from some of my top favorite psychological thriller openings of all time, that of which include the openings to Seven, the Netflix series Mindhunter, BBC's Sherlock, True Detective, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and even some very interesting ones like the opening to the 2018 miniseries of Agatha Christie's The ABC Murders, or both seasons' openings to the 2015 TV show Patriot. Not only did I take inspiration from the openings of these shows and movies, but I also was influenced by the plots of these films as well, especially when I mentioned True Detective or Patriot. David Fincher was also a huge inspiration for my opening, so I would hopefully assume that people who like him or his films as well would be interested in my film. In distribution to my film, I would see it going somewhere such as Amazon Prime, HBO Max, or some other streaming services as they have risen and continue to rise in popularity. Many of my favorite films are on these platforms. Sadly, but also reasonably, cable networks and movies that are released in theaters are becoming less popular due to both the growing world of technology and the current pandemic. This is sad in the way of that we are losing the old fun, let's go to the movies mentality, but it also is beneficial for the lesser-known film companies and smaller businesses to be seen. It creates a space for every creative mind to be given more of a chance at producing and streaming their creation, whether it be a movie or a series or documentary. My production skills developed a lot while working on this project. I've always been fascinated with film. Openings have always intrigued me, interestingly enough, especially those in the psychological thriller genre, so being able to create one was really fun and informative. I'm a person who likes to work on film projects backwards, and which I mean creating the ideas as I go, rather than starting with a storyboard and following it. Sometimes I have created storyboards for fun, usually when I would plan animations back in my middle school days, when I wanted to be an animator. For films, I usually have an idea in my head along with pieces in which I take inspiration. It was actually really nice to have a storyboard this time for film instead of just a vague vision in my head. Even though my final opening is quite different from my original storyboard, having one was really effective in helping me sort out my ideas in a rough draft on paper sort of way. When filming scenes, I kind of strayed from my original ideas a little bit in terms of what I could and couldn't shoot, and the ways, the angles and lighting I could get. I found new opportunities and ideas that would create different shots that I didn't originally intend. It was very enjoyable to work off of a storyboard and create new ideas as well. This project also pushed me to work under pressure, which I usually don't experience when experimenting with film and editing, since I do it as an occasional hobby. I definitely became stressed out sometimes, worrying that my opening wasn't going to become what I had in mind or that I wouldn't finish on time, but the pressure of due dates and criticism actually helped me realize that working in these kinds of conditions can actually improve my work, even though it might be really stressful. I received some great criticism from my peers and teacher, who really helped me to see things from a different perspective. It was cool to see things I never saw before or interpret thoughts that I haven't had previously. This project had me experimenting and experimenting and experimenting. I think I'll have to say that this was my favorite part of the whole project, just the experimenting. I experimented with so many different shots, different music, different edits, transitions, and programs. All of this experimenting was honestly so much fun, especially with my friend, who taught me how to make fake blood and fake wounds. We had a blast filming those shots, and as we filmed, new ideas for the shots just kept coming and coming. I actually integrated a lot more technologies in this project than I would have initially thought. I didn't think that I would have much use of online royalty-free or stock footage, effects, and music, but I did. I really did. I ended up having to go from about 10 soundtracks I loved to 5 and then to 3, and eventually picking one that I thought went the best with what I was going for. I still kept the others saved in case something changed my mind, but I ended up staying with the one that I really thought fit. Online stock footage helped me a ton in this film opening. I did have to pay for some of these shots. I think maybe 1 or 2 were free, but I knew what I wanted, so nothing bothered me in paying for what I wanted. Almost all of the footage in this opening is my own, which I love, but I definitely wanted some more B-roll footage to use, and these stock or royalty-free clips came into great help. The blood and water, or blood drop scene, whatever you would like to call it, was originally going to be a self-filmed shot, but after many attempts I was unable to get the shot. It just did not look right. I didn't have anything that was transparent and big enough to show the drops in an effective way. So, in a way, the online royalty-free clip of this blood saved my opening. In terms of software, I really went from one program to another trying to figure out what would work best for my film. After Effects was my original go-to because of my idea of the scene with the transforming ink blot. In terms of editing my video, however, I found that Premiere Pro could connect best with my other Adobe applications, which I didn't know, and was much more functional and just easier for me to understand. Not to mention my previous experience with the program, as I took a class in it last year that utilized Premiere Pro, and my dad being a big help as he is very experienced with Premiere Pro as well, and my former not really taught education but self-taught Premiere Pro experience. Hardware was actually a big part of my editing process as well, surprisingly. My dad has this big, it's kind of huge monitor that he uses for work sometimes, and I was able to use it to display my project. I worked on my laptop, which connected to the monitor, and it was super helpful. I was able to keep the Premiere Pro program open on the big monitor while also using my laptop screen to do other things like find clips, music, and effects, along with looking at my storyboard and some inspiration openings, which included a lot of David Fincher directed openings again. He's one of my favorite directors. This monitor was also so big, so it was really cool to be able to see my project so big and up close, and helped me edit it with more detail.